Hi everyone, and welcome to this week's Wildlife Wednesday Weekly Roundup. I'm your host, Tenley Thompson, and we've got some great videos to show you from all over the Greater Yellowstone ecosystem this week, including Grand Teton, Jackson Hole, and the National Elk Refuge. The way this is going to work is we're going to show you great video our guides have been taking throughout the week, then you'll have a chance to win our trivia question of the week, and lastly, I'll be answering your questions live. So, if you've got any questions for a wildlife biologist, go ahead and put them in the comment section and we'll see if we can't get you some answers. Let's start this week with an update on everyone's favorite grizzly bear 399.
Hello everyone, Josh here from Jackson Hole Ecotour Adventures. Last week during the Thanksgiving week, I was out with guests and got to see Grizzly 399 and 4 cubs in Grand Teton National Park. 399's been pretty exciting. Her travels have been, at least this last few months. She's been outside of the park, which puts her on private land in areas that are somewhat hazardous for a grizzly bear and 4 cubs. But recently she did return to the park, and we think she's hopefully there for the rest of the season, and we'll be going into hibernation soon. It's interesting to see grizzly bears out this late in the fall. In fact, in Yellowstone, most collared grizzly bears are actually hibernating right now. Grand Teton's a little bit unique because there is a food source for grizzly bears that keeps them up a little bit later than in other parts of the ecosystem. And that food source is a late season cow elk hunt. The refuge currently has several thousand elk on it, and at around 25,000 acres, if you have too many elk, the elk become concentrated and it can become a really big concern for disease. So the refuge attempts to manage that population through having hunting. This is a benefit for grizzlies because you have carcasses left behind, parts of the animal that's not edible, which the grizzlies can feed upon, but it also presents a risk factor, as if a hunter surprises a grizzly, there could be a dangerous interaction that could lead to either the hunter or the grizzly bear being injured or worse. Fortunately, we haven't seen many of these instances in the past years of having the refuge hunt go on. So thankfully this year, nothing that we know of so far in terms of hunter and grizzly conflict, and we're hoping that Grizzly 399 has a nice full belly and a bunch of fat reserves so she can go into hibernation here in the near future. Thanks for watching.
Thanks, Josh. Next, let's check out some really fun footage that I particularly loved seeing this week, which is the most adorable American marten, oftentimes called the pine marten.
Hey guys, Ecotour Adventures Guide Elise here. I'm really excited to share this amazing sighting with you. We had the rare opportunity to view an American marten relaxing in a tree. These are one of my favorite species in the Greater Yellowstone ecosystem, so let's check it out. Marten are widespread in the Jackson Hole area and live in coniferous and mixed wood forests. They are mustelids, or members of the weasel family, are about the size of a domestic cat, and have a dark brown coat with a beautiful orange blaze on their chest. They also have semi-retractable claws, which are great for climbing trees as well as catching prey. Marten spend much of their time in trees, like this marten here, but will travel the forest floor in search of food. They eat mostly small rodents such as red squirrels, mice, voles, snowshoe hares, and marmots, but are opportunistic feeders and have also been found to feed on birds, eggs, and berries. They are one of the few predators that is able to catch a squirrel, being just as quick. Marten may be active as much as 60% of the day in the summer, but as little as 16% of the day in wintertime. Males and females will tolerate each other's presence, but both will defend their territory from other marten of the same sex. They have a low population density for a carnivore of their size, mostly due to prey availability. Marten are solitary with the exception of the breeding season in July and August. Similar to bears, delayed implantation takes place in marten, with the embryos implanting in late winter. They give birth to 1 to 5 kits in late March or April, and those kits will stay with their mother until the end of their first summer, dispersing in the fall. We don't often have the opportunity to view the tenacious marten in a relaxed setting like this. They are incredibly quick and agile animals and can easily jump from tree to tree and quickly move about the ground as well. The few sightings I've experienced have been catching a glimpse of one as it's on the move. I do, however, get to see their tracks quite often in the winter on snowshoe tours, as marten are active throughout the year. They leave easily identified tracks in the snow with their broad, fur-covered feet that allow them to travel on the snow with ease. Getting to see one of these tenacious small animals is a rare treat and one I was very excited about.
Are they not the most adorable animals under the sun? Really, really, really cute. A big thanks to Sean for that great footage, which was taken a little bit earlier in the year, was not taken this week. I always want to have full disclosure on that. And to Elise for her great interpretation of what's got to be one of the most adorable animals in North America, and one that's not that commonly seen. All right, next, from EcoTour Adventures naturalist Kirk, we've got a great answer to a question I oftentimes get asked by guests in the winter, which is how do these animals stay warm here in Jackson Hole? Let's check it out.
Hey everybody, you might be wondering how a lot of these critters in Jackson Hole stay warm all winter. I mean, they're spending nights out here in -20, -30 degree temperatures, and it's certainly got to take its toll. We would not be able to survive out there, that's for sure. So there has to be some special adaptations for animals like elk and moose and deer to survive these cold temps, as they're spending a lot of time in the snow, and maybe as they're migrating, they could be crossing rivers and streams. And I wanted to touch on a couple of these adaptations that involve blood flow. And the first being vasoconstriction. This means that those tiny little blood vessels closest to the skin are going to constrict and not allow as much blood to move through them. That's because those blood vessels closest to the skin are going to release heat. If they could keep that blood flowing more in the interior of their body or their limbs, then they're going to stay warmer. Their core temperature is going to be warmer. But another really important thing would be counter current exchange. And this means that all those veins and arteries delivering blood and returning blood to the core are so intertwined that blood closest to the core can warm the blood returning to the core. So as they're walking through things like rivers, that blood moving away from the core can keep that cold blood in the extremities pretty warm, so by the time it returns back to the core, it's not going to lower their overall body temperature. Something that I definitely wish that I had.
So it's been relatively warm for early December here in Jackson Hole, but it was about 8 degrees this morning Fahrenheit, and so a lot of those animals are definitely using those winter coats and that amazing vascular system to keep warm. And a big thanks to Kirk and Tyler, who contributed some of the footage of that last segment. One of my favorite things when I'm out on trips with guests here is to actually see how the snow does not melt off the back of many of these animals when it's actively snowing. As you kind of saw in that image of that moose in that video there, they're so well insulated and so well built for winter that barely any heat escapes their bodies, and as a result of that, you don't actually see the snow melting on their backs, versus if you just stuck your hand out in the snow, it would melt. Snowflakes would melt right away on your hand. So pretty cool to see. If you're ever out here in Jackson in the wintertime, it really is one of my favorite things to check out. Next up, I'm pretty darn excited about this one. We've got some beaver battles brought to us by EcoTour's naturalist, Sarah. Let's check in.
Hello, this is Sarah with EcoTour Adventures. I want to share this encounter that we had. I was scanning the lake and saw what I thought was an otter. So I dragged the crew down to the water and we waited for that little brown head to pop up, but much to my surprise, it was a beaver, not an otter. And the reason why I suspected it was an otter at first was because of how fast and active these animals were moving. Usually beavers travel through the water very sedately. Otters tend to be a bit more of a high energy approach. But these animals were really splashing around. Beavers are usually gentle, family-oriented animals, but this moment allowed us to catch a glimpse into the fiercely territorial nature of beavers. Beavers are the Greater Yellowstone ecosystem's largest rodent. Most adults weigh in about the same as a coyote, 20 to 40 pounds, but beavers can get pretty large. Really, really large. The record beaver of Wyoming weighed in at over 90 pounds, which is heavier than most female wolves. That's a rodent of an unusual size. Add inch-long teeth, a bite force twice as strong as that of a human, and thick claws to their weight. A beaver fight is nothing to joke about. However, beavers have no interest in killing their opponents, and most fights end without serious injury. Each beaver family consists of a mated pair, which mate for life. Beavers patrol the borders of their territory, the size of which kind of varies depending on food resources, but can be as long as half a mile of creeks. They will construct signposts of mud piles along the edge of the water that let other beavers know who's been in the area and what their status is. Kind of like Facebook, if Facebook was made of mud instead of electrons. And rather than type to update their status, a beaver leaves behind scents from glands near the base of the flat tail. One of these glands produces castoreum, a musky scent that has been used in perfume making. So if you are out canoeing and you see a beaver swimming in a really determined manner towards you, it's good to know what your perfume is made of. Beavers leave their family at 2 years old in an attempt to find a new one. Perhaps the encounter we see in this video is a younger animal challenging the resident beaver for territory, or maybe a resident trying to chase away a young lone beaver that has recently left its family. A successful beaver can live over a dozen years in the wild, but first they have to find a home. When they travel across the land to find a mate in an unoccupied territory, they are very vulnerable to predators, including bears, wolves, otters, and humans. I like to keep that in mind when I see an adult beaver in a pond. Each one has beaten the odds in their own epic journey and is the hero of their story.
Thanks, Sarah, for that great view of beavers. I have never seen beavers in a fight before. I have heard that they can certainly fight to a certain degree of injury. It's certainly something I was familiar with, but I've never actually caught them battling like that. Those were some really, really big males. And of course, guys, remember the goal of our Wildlife Weekly Roundup is we show you videos from this week. That one was taken late last month. Just like the Pine Marten video, we always want to make sure we're telling you if it wasn't this week, you can see there's not any snow on the ground, but I assure you there was frost and that water was really, really cold that those beavers were battling in. So a big thanks to Sarah Ernst for that segment, because honestly, I don't know if I'm ever going to get a chance to see that. I might get lucky one day. But that's the first battling beaver footage I think I've ever seen. All right, next up, we've got a update from Laura, who is really one of the favorites here at our Wildlife Wednesday Weekly Roundup. She had this awesome sort of evidence of a moose crossing the river. Let's check it out.
Hey everyone, this is Laura. I'm up here at Grand Teton National Park, where just yesterday I saw a set of moose tracks that started on this side of the river and then came out the other side. I didn't actually see the moose cross, but with snow on the ground, we know that he was here, which is so cool. That's one of my favorite things about wintertime tours, is we get to track animals through the snow. Moose are actually excellent swimmers, even though they're really large, up to 900 pounds or so here in Grand Teton National Park. They're great at swimming. They could easily pass their deep water test and get the badge at the pool. Moose can dive down underneath the water up to 18 feet. They can hold their breath for over a minute, and they have the ability to naturally plug their nose with little valves in their nasal cavities to seal the water. Moose can swim at about 6 miles per hour, and they can maintain that pace over long distances, up to 2 hours. To compare that to us humans, the famous Olympic swimmer Michael Phelps swam at a pace of about 6 miles per hour to win his gold medals. From that, I gather that I shouldn't challenge a moose or Michael Phelps to a swimming competition. I will lose. But for this moose to cross the fast-flowing channel of the Snake River must have been quite cold. He was in and out in probably about 20 to 30 seconds. I wish I had seen it. Hopefully next time I get to catch that moose crossing on video to show it off to you. But thank you for watching this week. I'll see you next week, same time, same place, and have a good week out there. Stay safe, everybody. See ya.
I particularly love the moose hair left over on that tree and in the snow. Pretty awesome stuff. Lots of easy moose in view in Jackson Hole right now. Winter always is one of the easiest or the easiest time to see moose. But to see one cross a swift-moving river like that really would have been something. So I'm bummed I missed it. I'm bummed Laura missed it. But I am excited that she caught some great evidence of that moose crossing. So hopefully you guys enjoyed that video this week. We've got lots more from Laura next week, rounding up some of our best views of wolves from late this fall coming into the winter, getting ready for the most active time for wolf viewing in Jackson Hole, which is, of course, wolf breeding season up in the northern range of Yellowstone and in Grand Teton National Park and the National Elk Refuge, which is January, February. We have a lot of wolf multi-days in typical years that would be going out that time of year to see those activities. But even on a day trip, good opportunities for wolves if you happen to be in the valley during that time. Speaking of which, I do want to remind everybody, if you plan on going on a trip anytime in the future, we do offer 10% off any booking if you mention the Wildlife Wednesday broadcast, because we'd love to know who's watching and where they're watching from. It's so great to see everybody in the comment section, some wonderful old friends checking in and joining us. So wonderful of you guys to be spending your Wednesday with us. All right, so I think it's time for my favorite part, or my second favorite part, as everybody knows, segment, which of course is our trivia question of the week. I do want to, of course, clarify and explain to folks that our trivia question gets you a $10 gift card to the EcoTour Adventure store. We actually started the store to help fund employee health insurance after the pandemic started. We wanted to make sure everybody had coverage in case they got sick. So far, we've been very fortunate in that regard. We are so grateful so many of you guys spent your Black Friday shopping at our little store and found some fun items. Our featured item this week, because of course it was just Giving Tuesday, is this awesome book. It's called Phantom of the North. It's all about great gray owls of Grand Teton and Yellowstone. Really, really awesome. Done in partnership with some of the great folks over at the Teton Raptor Center here in Jackson Hole, and a portion of the proceeds of that book is going towards the Teton Raptor Center. So if you would like to support a great cause with your gifting this Christmas, and you know somebody who loves owls and loves great gray owls like we do, hopefully some of you caught that great segment on great gray owls from Sarah last week, definitely check out that book. It's a signed copy. And it is beautiful. It's got stunning photographs. That cover photo that I just was showing you guys was a finalist, or maybe perhaps the winner, I can't remember, in the Great American Photography Audubon competition. And is actually at the Smithsonian right now in Washington, D.C. It was taken here in the Greater Yellowstone ecosystem. Now, some of you guys last week expressed a desire that you liked the stuff on the store, but you didn't really feel like you needed to buy anything in the store, but you still wanted to help us out with health insurance. And boy, we were absolutely blown away that you all would love to do that. So we decided that it might be worth doing what we're going to call the tip jar. If you've enjoyed watching some of these naturalists and their interpretation, and you enjoy these videos every week, and hey, you want to help us out with our health insurance, we'd love that. Feel free, certainly no obligation. But Maddie will link to this, hopefully for me. At the EcoTour Adventure store, we now have our donations to ETA Guides health insurance, and you can donate there. We're going to try and get like a Venmo or something to make it easier for those of you guys who want to do it. No pressure, obviously, but boy, that's really cool that some of you guys want to help us out. So we really, really appreciate everybody's support. And I know Maddie, who's in the comments section today, everybody say hi to Maddie, certainly appreciates it as well. Okay, so back to trivia. If you want to win a $10 gift card to that store, which is probably enough at least to get you one of Laura's $3.99 stickers, they're gigantic, awesome, amazing stickers of her and the quadruplets, or Kira Cassidy's owl stickers perhaps, or quite a few other things. All you have to do is answer our trivia question of the week correctly, and we will choose one person out of all the correct answers in the comments section to win that gift card. But let's go to last week's question first, because after all, we got to answer that. Now, some of y'all may recall the question was, what mammal can eat sage? And remember, we were debating, because it was right before Thanksgiving, if turkeys can eat sage. But I'm not talking about birds. What mammal can eat sage? So, we live in a sage habitat. The vast majority of wildlife, particularly in the winter here in Jackson Hole, are out in the sagebrush flats, but almost none of them can metabolize nutritional value from sage. Sage is very tough and woody. It's a desert plant. It's well built against being fed upon, and it's got almost no nutritional value. And so most animals, like moose or deer or elk, are not actually going to be able to metabolize and eat sage and have a benefit. It's actually going to cost more energy to digest the sage than the caloric gain they're going to get from it. There's only one animal that is successful. A lot of you guys in the comments last week said moose. Moose do eat in the sagebrush flats, but they're eating in and amongst the sage a different plant called antelope bitterbrush, as our elk, which is very nutritious for them. But there's only one mammal that can eat the sage itself, and that animal is the pronghorn antelope. Just a couple people answered that one correctly. If you answered pronghorn antelope last week, then you have been entered to win, and Elise will go ahead and notify our winner this week. Did you get it right? If you didn't see last week's, was that the one you were thinking about? Definitely let me know in the comment section. Pronghorn antelope is the answer for sure, built for the sagebrush flat and plains where it spends its entire year. So great, thank you very much for that. And then of course, this week's question comes to us from Elise. And this is the one, guys, you want to comment to the comment section if you know the answer for a chance to win. And that is, what is a group of squirrel nuts called? In other words, when a squirrel gathers a group of nuts, what is that group of nuts called? Now, depending on if you live in the East or the West Coast, or if you speak British or American English, there's actually two answers to this question. We will accept either one of them. But what is the group of nuts that a squirrel puts away for winter called? This, of course, is a white bark pine tree with white bark pine cones and nuts. Very, very important to our local squirrel population and local bird population. Really, really important food source. What is it called? A group of nuts that a squirrel puts away. So if you know the answer, go ahead and answer in the comment section. Don't overthink it, guys. You've probably used the term before when referring to that group of nuts. It's not a super sciencey word. It's just a typical word in the language, and we'll see who can get that right. Now, of course, some of our small mammal species don't hibernate here in the Greater Yellowstone ecosystem. That was actually a trivia question a few weeks ago. Those guys, of course, are going to rely on that cache of nuts all season long throughout the winter. So definitely see if you can't get that answer correct, and we will see who wins next week when we'll get you guys an answer. All right, time now for my favorite part of the program, which is I'm here to answer your questions live. Okay, the way this is gonna work is I've got my iPad here. So if you see me looking down, that's because I'm looking down at any questions that folks have for me, and I'll see if I can't get you guys some answers. So go ahead and write in the comment section if you've got any for me, and we'll go ahead and we'll see if we can't get you any answers. Let's see here. Don, you're teasing me, but I like your answer. It's not correct, but it's still a great answer. A Congress of nuts. Pretty good. Pretty good. I like it. Let's see here. Oh, Maddie says he's got a video of a beaver fighting a grizzly bear in Grand Teton National Park. Maddie, you could have, I don't know, shared that video with the rest of us. We'll see if Maddie can dig that up, and maybe we'll share it with you guys next week if folks would like to see that, since I said I had never actually seen a beaver battle. Apparently Maddie has, so that's pretty fun. All right, Carrie says, did I understand Sarah to say that beavers have to find a new home at 2 years old? If so, why is that? And could other juvenile beavers then become of the part of the family the others just left? So, Carrie, that's a great question. So, the way this works is beavers give birth to their young, and then those young go through the first winter. And remember, beavers don't hibernate, right? They're feeding on the cambium, the inner bark of trees and branches, throughout the winter in their lodge. They go through that first winter, and then in the spring, their mother gives birth to a new set of young at the den site. And then those original young from the first year actually help raise the new set. Not only are they helping with that, but it takes a huge amount of adult power to maintain a lodge and a dam. It's actually really, really hard to keep a dam from constantly overflowing. You've got to constantly upkeep it, and you've got to constantly maintain and use mud on your lodge. And so those, let's call them subadults, or juveniles, fine too, they stay with the family for an extra year to learn all the skills that you need to be an adult beaver. But remember that you can only have so many beavers per square mile of riparian river habitat, or they'll overeat all the cambium in the trees that are available. And so after that second year, the parents will drive those beavers out to go and find new homes. And they have to go find somewhere that has not already been colonized by beavers, who certainly aren't going to be friendly with any other beavers coming around. So while Sarah said in the video she wasn't exactly sure why those two beavers were battling, it is possible that that was a juvenile looking for a new location to find a mate and raise his own family, and he had stumbled into the territory of an existing beaver family who was going, not here, keep moving on. The good news is you don't have to build an elaborate lodge to survive your first winter. A lot of beavers will just use an old muskrat hole in the riverbank or something along those lines if they're solo, if they aren't able to connect with a mate in their first year on their own. But juveniles certainly would not want to move in with an existing family. Remember, that family is then going to give birth again in the spring, and the pups from the year before are then going to help raise the next set of young. So the most perilous time in a beaver's life is when they are in search of a new home. But that colonization that beavers take to find new territories is incredibly important for ecosystems. By going into areas where beavers are not present and then creating wetlands through their dams, they create biomass and food resources and habitat for dozens and dozens, sometimes hundreds of other species of animals who then are able to live in those habitats that beavers create. So there's only a few animals in the world that actually create their own ecosystems. Coral in coral reefs is a perfectly good example. Humans do it and beavers do it, but there aren't a lot of other ones. Beavers really are special for that reason and incredibly important for the diversity of our Yellowstone ecosystem. They're kind of a keystone. When they're there, lots of other animals are present. When they're missing, lots of other animals aren't able to find habitat to live in. So hopefully that answers your question. That's a great one. Let's see here. I'm loving some of these answers. Bill, sadly, it's not a chunk of nuts either, but I really wish it was, because that just rolls off the tongue, a chunk of nuts. I would love it if squirrels just chunked up some nuts. That'd be pretty cool. Sadly, that one's not right either, but I do think it's great. Bethany asks, do eagles overwinter in your area? Bethany, yes. We have a huge number of bald eagles and golden eagles that make use of the Greater Yellowstone ecosystem year-round. Interestingly enough, they're not always the same eagles. It wasn't until we started really monitoring eagle populations, really starting in the late 1960s, that we began to really understand where eagles go from time to time. We always figured it was the same eagles kind of hanging around. When Brian Bedrosian, very famous bird biologist who was based for many years and is still in Jackson Hole, started putting GPS receivers on eagles, they actually found out a whole lot more information. We do have eagles who live here year-round. We also have eagles who come in just in the fall and early winter, this time of year, to feast, just as those grizzly bears that we were talking 399 was doing earlier on kills. So they come in just during the hunting season to feed on gut piles, just like the bears are doing, and then they may continue on their way. We also have eagles who come in just for the winter time, just to be out on the elk refuge, and wolves, of course, wolves and coyotes are a major reason that they can find habitat here. They survive on carrion, right? We don't like to think of our American bird as a carrion eater like a vulture, but around here that's a huge component of what they eat. So we actually have different populations of eagles who are here at different times of year. Some are here year-round, and some of them are actually here only for the winter or only for the summer or even only for the fall or the spring. Pretty crazy stuff. And of course, bald eagles and golden eagles are present in the Greater Yellowstone ecosystem. So if you are ever here, odds are if you spend any time on the river, you'll get a good chance to see at least bald eagles. And then we also do see those golden eagles as well, although they're a little bit more rare. We don't see them quite as often. We've got some great video footage that actually came in yesterday. Didn't have quite enough time to turn around for tonight's broadcast of both bald eagles and golden eagles on one of those kills. So hopefully something we can show you guys next week. All right, great question. Thanks very much. Karen says, so grizzly bears have the same mate year after year. Karen, that's a great question. One of the fun things about grizzly bears is they're capable of this higher order cognitive thinking, these skills that we sometimes don't think of other mammals other than us being able to do. And one of it is the things that they have are these very distinct personalities. Some bears absolutely have the same mate year after year after year. And that's either because they like that mate or because that's just the dominant male in the territory in which they live. Other bears will have a different one every single year. So some bears are almost monogamous. For example, grizzly bear 399 has bred with the same male for, coming up on a decade now. And some absolutely a different male every year. There definitely is some female choice involved in that decision making. Just because you're the dominant male of the ecosystem does not mean she's not going to be able to fight you off if she does not like you enough. But yeah, totally bizarre. Also remember, of course, our bear breeding season's in the spring, because remember, bears practice delayed implantation, just like that pine marten that Elise was showing us earlier does, which is to say they hold those implanted eggs in stasis. They hold those fertilized eggs in stasis and don't implant them until the late fall, early winter, and then give birth in the den. So a very short gestation period, just a couple months for bears. The vast majority of the time, those eggs are held in stasis. We care about that, not only because it's just really cool and bizarre and delayed implantation is just kind of crazy, but it's also really important for fertility science. People who are hoping to have children but are having problems with fertility, there's hope that by researching how bears are able to hold fertilized eggs in stasis, we as humans might be able to do it sometime soon, someday soon as well. There's actually quite a few different studies that are going on regarding that. Reproductively, bears are very similar to human mammals. And so it should technically be something that should be able to translate, although nothing patented or approved by the FDA yet. But great question, we appreciate that. Let's see here. All right. I think we may have gotten through all the questions. Let me just double check. Maddie, are you just holding these videos back from all of us? He says, I got a video crossing a pond this afternoon because he can't ice skate. Yeah, send that along there, Maddie. Tisk tisk. We'll see if we can't get it out for you guys for next week. Hopefully everybody would enjoy seeing that. I definitely would enjoy seeing that, so we'll check that out. Karen asks, is 399's mate called Bruno? Yes, Bruno is the name that's commonly given to 399. Remember, on this program, we do try, when possible, to use research numbers. I can't remember off the top of my head. I don't think Bruno has a research number, so in that case, we would use a name. That's what everybody commonly calls him for sure. He's just a huge, big old male grizzly that hangs out in northern Grand Teton National Park. So very good, you know his name. That was very impressive. All right, guys, let's see. Oh, here we go. Don asks, do wolves take many sheep on the refuge? Don, that's a great question. Wolves can take bighorn sheep, and they certainly have. But remember the way wolves work. They're looking for the weakest, sickliest, easiest to catch thing, where they have to do the least amount of work and are going to have the highest rate of success. And while that could be almost anything, almost always on the elk refuge, it ends up being an elk. There's just so many elk on the elk refuge in the wintertime, inevitably one of them is going to be injured or ill or sick or weak in some way or another, and they're going to go ahead and concentrate on that. Obviously, elk just die from winter conditions. They can die from a variety of different things. One of the more problematic issues we have is called scabies. Mange is a type of scabies, to give you guys an idea. But it's not mange, it's more properly scabies. Mange is more in carnivora. But the point here is they'll lose their hair, they'll itch their hair off, and then of course they can become hypothermic because they don't have enough of a winter coat if they get too severe on that. There's another illness on the elk refuge, very common, that's called hoof rot. And hoof rot can be caused by a variety of different factors, but generally it's when they walk on very sharp snow. You know, when snow freezes, it can kind of freeze into these sharp sort of shards. They get these cuts on their feet, which get infected, and that causes a sepsis and can kill them. And if they're just dying of natural causes, why would the wolves bother to go after bighorn sheep, right? They can just go and get a free meal with zero effort. So I definitely know of cases where wolves have taken sheep, but it's very, very, very rare. Far, far easier just to go for the free food, right? So great question. Let's see here. Mark asks, what's the comparison in sense of smell with a bear, wolf, and moose? I heard bears have among the best sense of smell in nature based on olfactory cells in their nose. Mark, you are right. Bears are definitely hard to beat when it comes to sense of smell. I've heard various estimates, but the easiest way to sort of understand it is a grizzly bear, for instance, can smell blood from almost a mile away. And then if you really want to play the oh my gosh game, a polar bear can smell a female in heat if the wind direction is right from almost 100 miles away. Yeah, I know. I just said that. I didn't believe it myself until I actually looked into the research. It is correct. They have amazing, amazing sense of smell. Wolves would probably be a close second. Their sense of smell is far, far more powerful than a dog. And then, of course, a dog's sense of smell is roughly 10 to 50 times better, depending on which study you want to quote, than a human's. So the way to think about it is all of these animals, bears, wolves, dogs, they see the world through their nose. We're visual animals. Our main sense of the world is visual acuity. That's how we understand the world, is through vision. So it's actually really hard for me to think through seeing the world with my nose, which you notice I just used the word seeing. Smelling the world with my nose is my dominant sense. But keep in mind, wolves and bears can smell pregnancy in elk. They can smell cancer. They can smell hoof rot. They can smell all sorts of diseases. They can smell if an animal has a fever. And the same way that a dog can detect changes in electrical signals in brains and can detect seizures. they're actually detecting changes in pheromones, which are scents that all mammals and animals give up all the time, that we can't smell, but all of these animals actually can, and they can tell if you're happy or sad or upset or angry, all by pheromones. It's really, really an amazing thing. I used to sometimes get upset when I was a teenager for, whatever teenager angsty reason, and then I didn't want people to know I was upset. And my dog always knew because he could smell it on me, which is really amazing. If you've ever had a dog who can do something similar along those lines, he would give it away every single time that I was clearly must have been having a problem with something, and I think my parents always then knew. So pretty cool stuff for sure. As for beavers, they have a good sense of smell, but not necessarily extraordinarily good sense of smell. About average, nothing particularly special. Their eyesight is not particularly amazing either. It's not bad, but it's not great. They do have a really good sense of hearing. That's also a really important sense for them. So yeah, different animals sort of see the world in different ways. Definitely pronghorn antelope are going to win in the vision contest, right? They have eyes that are so good they can see the moons of Jupiter or the rings of Saturn on a dark night with their naked eye. But I would argue bears are definitely going to win the sense of smell competition. Just really, really impressive. And then something like a fox or a coyote would probably win the hearing, maybe an owl. I think that was a question a couple of weeks ago, actually, who had the best hearing. So hopefully that answers that for you. Don asks, are grizzlies in the Wind River Range? Absolutely. That's a viable population of grizzly bears. Remember, grizzlies were nearly extinct by the 1970s, and their population had decreased greatly. And so they're still repopulating historically important areas. The Wind River Reservation is absolutely important habitat for grizzlies and for wolves. The Wind River Range is slowly growing in that biodiversity. We're getting there. Their population is doing really well. So, great question. All right. Guys, I think I got them all. That was really fun. You had some good ones for me this week. Always a pleasure spending each Wednesday with you. I hope you all have an absolutely wild week. You stay safe out there, and we'll definitely see you next week. So long.